Welcome to the Awaken Living podcast. Today I have my first guest. I've never had a guest before, so this is like a total new thing for me. My friend Chris from the Fertile Current. That's his company over there. He does what's known as electroculture, and a lot of people who are probably listening to this or into my stuff are, into like gardening and energy work and stuff, and they might have used like the copper rods, which, you and I have talked briefly about, and just like the simple like copper spires, but electroculture goes way, way deeper than that. And it's really an ancient thing that's kind of coming back now. Same with pyramids, it's a really similar concept. And we really me and Chris really connected on a lot of this stuff. So figured I'd have him on. And so welcome, man. I'm super excited to like keep talking about all this stuff. We just started recording and we were just talking for a little while, but yeah. So the first thing I would
Thank
ask
you,
you,
Sean.
yeah, for sure. I'm so excited, honestly. The first,
Same, bro.
just to get started, could you explain what electroculture is and how you got into it?
Yes, certainly. Thanks for having me on, bro. Honored to be your first guest. So yes, my wife and I have been running our farm as our primary and only source of income for nearly 12 years. And over the course of time, we went from very, very inexperienced young farmers to, doing pretty well with our systems to kind of remembering, I like to call it, certain aspects that are integral to the universe, really, and they apply directly to agriculture like they do to health and to all aspects of life, truly. And I had been exposed to electroculture, the concept of it, kind of early on in our farming endeavor, did not fully grasp it. Um, I found a farm in Florida at the time that was measuring and valuing and pricing and kind of advertising the quality of their produce through measuring the angstrom level with certain types of photography
Oh,
and
wow.
different types of magnetic lenses. And I was just super intrigued by it. And I knew inherently, I was like, that's it. That's how you measure the value of food. Like maybe not even that exactly or that only, but things like that. I knew it's the energetic value, the potential energy it has, the nutrient density is a more common term, but it even goes past that on a more atomic level and even a more vibrational frequency based level. Um, and so, but at the time, as a new beginning farmer, like we had all the learning curves against us. We didn't own, like we moved to a very raw, unfarmed piece of land with no infrastructure,
Yeah.
very inexpensive. And we also had a two-year-old son when we started our farm.
Hmm.
So we're also new parents. And so we it was always there, but I put it aside and concentrated on straightforward organic farming. And that was okay, but there was a lot of components of that over time became less appealing to me. So so over time, I kind of gravitated back toward things like that. Now, like electroculture, and raw rock minerals as opposed to like using the byproducts of like conventional agriculture and in most cases like mass conventional slaughter. Because as an organic farmer, I started to realize because we were pretty strict, we're very
Hmm.
strict, with our with our methods and our techniques, at least so we thought, and we did everything to the best of our knowledge base, as we continue to do today. There's things that are definitely improved, can be improved upon, and hopefully I'll figure out what those are as time goes, always, and apply them. Um, it's not applying the knowledge you gain that leads to frustration. So I think that that's what started happening to me as a farmer. Even though even the farming started going pretty well, sales were better, I got more
Hmm.
regular customers, but we started producing better. But there were still a lot of things that just, with my own personal morality, with no judgment on anybody else's morality, because it's me that's doing it, it's me that's running this my wife and I that are running this business and buying the inputs we're putting in.
Hmm.
So as we started to kind of become conflicted with our own techniques, because really what you're using primarily in that case are like blood meal, bone meal, burnt poultry feathers. Um, and I've seen firsthand even like the best versions of a lot of these types of situations on small farms and even been a part of them as far as like slaughtering techniques. It's not my personal thing that but no judgments. But when it becomes a byproduct of all these mass conventional industries that we're kind of otherwise saying we don't want to support or be a part of, it felt very hypocritical just for us personally. So we started slowly converting all of our methods. At this same time, I was in a medical Qigong, multi-year medical Qigong program to get credentials to do to practice medical Qigong um, and see patients. It was something I'd wanted to do personally for some time. Had been doing Chinese martial arts and Qigong for some time. Found a great program, a great teacher, Dr. J. Michael Wood. And through that training, I had gotten back into electroculture over some time. As I'm explaining, we converted all of our inputs on our farm to raw rock minerals,
Oh
no
wow.
longer using any animal inputs whatsoever. So it's just vegetable waste compost, very heavily, and that's the humus. That's your humic and fulvic acid, and then you have the minerals. Um, Compost is very scalar in nature. Humus is very scalar because it's carbon that's deconstructed back to its most elemental form. It's like a blank slate. So it's kind of like how scalar is all directions at the same time.
Uh,
You take that blank slate and you vectorize it with the minerals that you add, and then it has a transmutative effect on those minerals to help the soil find equilibrium. And that's the divine kind of intelligence of soil. And it's the same way the human body uses adaptogenic uh, medicines.
yeah, yeah,
It's
that's powerful.
adaptogenic. It's adaptogenic, right? So it will be minerals will become what the soil needs them to become. They're in no way stagnant or and cauterized in one form or one mineral. Like, they will change magnetic potential, like paramagnetic minerals become diamagnetic
Mm,
through fulvic and humic acid through compost. You can look at it chemically as, through fulvic and humic acid, and
sure.
you can look at it atomically through quantum agriculture lenses as the scalar nature of compost. But as I studied medical qigong and studied healing the body and trauma and all these things, that are known about, uh, heaven and earth energy, positive and negative energy. You're the conductor in this case, just like
Right.
the ground. So I'm in class one night. It's like 10 o'clock or 9:30 at night with my teacher and my small group. And he's explaining, I don't even remember what he was really explaining, but medical qigong, working on probably one of the organ systems or something at this point. And I had been, of course, reading, I had read every book, every old thing that's available about electroculture, Justin Christofflu, of course, all the old books. There's not that many. There's not that much stuff out there.
Yeah, yeah.
And I had kind of gleaned the world at the time. Um, there's probably way more now you could go find online than there was at this point in time. And he was talking about heaven and earth energy and applying it to something, and it just clicked. Like the reading I had been doing and the studying I had been doing on the antennas and stuff, because I had been staring at them and like trying to figure them out for quite some time. And honestly, kind of figured out how the systems work more or less and was ready to do it. I was ready to apply. I was ready to just try it out. And there really wasn't like I wanted to just go buy equipment. It really wasn't equipment. So over time, the principle clicked, and I went home and I was like, man, I think I understand how this works. and started just experimenting with making antennas and then eventually putting systems in. And as someone who's grown the same collection of crops for over at this point, around 7 years or so in this same place, starting to install these systems and watching so many variables change, I was honestly just truthfully kind of shocked. Like I knew it was, I was expecting just like, I just wanted to try it. I wasn't necessarily expecting the kind of results. And we're a working farm with a young child who depends on this for our sole income. So it was in no way like peripheral or like, oh, I'm gonna do that because I'm gonna be extra. It was like, wow, that was a bit of an experiment, but that's so incredibly effective
Definitely
on
is.
so many tiers. Yeah.
Definitely. Sorry about the background noise. A friend of mine
No,
had
I don't hear
thought he
anything.
didn't
You're
know I
you're
was doing
good.
a podcast.
I
Okay,
got
good. I'm
I
not
got a
noticing
cat
the music.
whiling out in here
Okay, cool.
anyways.
But man, that's an awesome story. I'm sure you have so much wisdom, and like this podcast is called like Bridging Heaven and Earth. So it's funny you're saying.
Perfect, man.
But I
So cool.
like you had recommended we were talking about podcast episode name. But yeah, I really feel like that's such an accurate thing of what is happening. And I think your story is so powerful, and it's just kind of took multiple like perspectives and experiences of life that you had and put them all together into the wisdom that you have now, and that the person you are now and all of the awesome things that you're sharing. And so I first found you like on your Instagram. I totally forget how I found you. Do you remember? I might have like
I
followed
feel like it was a
you now.
picture.
Yeah.
I have a memory, and tell me if this is just me tripping, but do you know Soma?
Soma, doesn't ring a bell fully.
Okay. Well, I feel like you had liked or commented on a picture. It's an old friend I know from the Netherlands, and maybe a friend of yours was with. I could just be remembering
Okay.
a weird association of
No
events,
worries. No,
but
I
I feel
yeah,
like
I
we
forget
just
things
had some kind of overlap where we knew somebody who was the
for sure.
same,
Yeah, I was kind of
and it just
inevitable.
kind of,
Yeah.
yeah, that's how it goes because, I'm sure we're looking at kind of this, maybe the same world of stuff on some level.
Yeah,
I'm definitely a huge fan of all your work and Orgonite in general, that I want to go through the classes that you're offering as well.
thanks, man. I got you. Yeah, we'll talk
Yeah.
about that. That sounds great. I really appreciate the compliment. And I really look up to you and your stuff. It's like seems like we have like we've crossed a lot of the same like knowledge from spirit, if you catch my drift, like in our work. There's just a lot of similarities. I'm holding the electroculture antenna you sent me. What is the name of this one, by the way, for people
That's
listening?
that's the CW3 model, and I call it the Mana Feast.
Okay, so it basically has, this is audio, but it has a brass sphere on top, similar to if you're familiar with the like atmospheric energy harvesting buildings. I'm pretty sure you're familiar with them, but for the people listening,
Yeah.
basically have a brass top and they pull energy from the ether into some sort of conductive material, and either using it directly immediately or storing it in the building. Some people say in the old bricks it was stored, but I don't fully know. I've been studying this stuff
There's the
for a while, and
piezoelectric
for most
quality of granite as well.
absolutely, yeah, I use a lot of granite in pyramids. Really
Yeah.
powerful stuff.
Yeah.
It says there's only 9 minutes, so I'll just send a on the Zoom call here. So I'll just send the link over when it ends.
Okay,
Just
perfect.
pick right back up. But yeah, so could you tell us more about essentially what this antenna does and how you made it,
Of course.
built it?
Of course, yeah. So I started out influenced by a lot of the older antennas from the late 1800s. There were some makers in the Midwest United States. There were certainly one or two makers in France, and there was also, I believe, a maker in Perth in Australia. And they all kind of had similar designs, more or less. And my first antenna, the CW1, was designed after those models, basically, to include all those same features. And for those of you who may go to the website, it's thefertilecurrent.com. You can see pictures of these, but
I'll put it in the description, your website.
okay, cool, cool. just for a visual, if you want later, it has 33 spears, steel spears that come out of the top. And those are for specifically for atmospheric collection because that antenna you're going to mount at least 15, ideally 20 plus feet up in the air. Because when you get down lower than 15 feet or so, those positive ions in the atmosphere start naturally being drawn and paired to the soil surface. And that's the cation exchange. Um, and an interesting point that I like to make is like when we talk about heaven and earth energy, and in this case, in soil science, you're going to talk about heaven energy, yang, would be the cations, the positively charged ions. And then the earth, the yin energy, would be the anions, which are the negatively charged ions. But it's not like they're equally advancing toward each other in proportion. That's not how it works. One is advancing and one is receiving. So this action ends up heavily taking place in the topsoil because the earth is receiving the energy. And what rises up is more akin to the displacement of water when you get in like a bathtub. You're not that water isn't forcefully coming to meet you. You're displacing it with your advancement. So this is kind of a concept that I find important. Why this action is so heavily prevalent in our topsoil.
Hmm.
Um, so the antennas are designed with slightly different features and different usages in mind, whereas the CW1 needs to be mounted at least 15, if not higher feet in the air. The other models are designed to be used at any height. Now they will still collect atmospheric charge, but the higher you go, the more cations you can harvest. When you send an anode uh, thousands of feet in the air with a wire to the ground, you can power appliances. There's so many available positive ions up there, so that exchange rate is happening at a faster frequency, a higher vibrational rate, and you can power more things.
Yeah, that's
So here we're just interested in feeble voltage. Some people think, well, how much energy does it's not about how much it's about just it's about producing feeble voltage. And the conductor that's in the ground um, is an example of electromagnetic induction, which you can read about like Faraday's first law, basically. When you have a negative point and a positive point in a magnet and a conductor, that fluxing of potentials will induce voltage around that conductor. Um, and it's the same way water, it has to do with the way water currents flow as well. You'll have a paramagnetic rock on one side and a diamagnetic rock on one side on almost every major river.
right.
And the question then is only, well, did the magnetic potentials induce the voltage that caused the current of the water? Or was it vice versa? Was it the current that imparted or imbued the magnetic qualities into the rock? You can look at it either way. Um, but to stay focused on the antenna models, the CW3 that you have can be mounted at any height. It's a copper body. It is core filled with highly paramagnetic basalt, the highest quality
Oh,
paramagnetic
wow.
basalt
Is it
I
that
can
black
find.
basalt that I've seen her going around
Yes,
lately? Oh,
yes.
wow.
It's
That's
it's
amazing.
core filled. The whole core, the whole inside is core filled. And also what that allows is that basalt is pretty much the only rock in its raw form that has a decent capacitance. So it actually acts like a somewhat of a battery, holding on to cations to be released even at a faster rate than it directly conducts them.
Wow. That's
So it's a pretty
cool, man.
cool. I'll tell you another cool thing about the basalt is that it's paramagnetic. So it's in phase with that yang cosmic positive charge. So it's almost impossible for it to be struck by lightning. And I get this question a lot
Wow.
because now without that core filling, it would be likely to be struck by lightning because copper is diamagnetic.
Hmm.
Most copper. There is copper that's slightly paramagnetic, but um, it's copper is slightly diamagnetic, and so it would be likely for it to be because basically that would be giving off like a negative whip, like an invisible whip into
Yeah,
the
like a magnet
sky.
kind of.
Yeah, and it would be spark gapping with the positive discharge, the plasmatic, discharge. So in this case, we're in phase with that, and we're actually harnessing that down into our conductor where we want it in the ground. So it's a pretty neat addition. And otherwise, you have two tensor rods. They're the same length, but I offset them for like a yin and yang relationship,
Mhm.
basically, which a lot of my stuff is built on.
Same with the
Um,
old world buildings. If you look on the
yeah,
top, they're like
for
just like that.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I also just mimicked a lot of things that I found intuitively powerful. Um, and they all seem to coalesce. So it just
Mhm.
was like, well, that's what we're looking at. There's a thermocouple, which is just a modern thermocouple, type K thermocouple that's the small silvery looking chrome rod. And that is utilizing what's known as the Seebeck effect, which is the difference in hot and cold of different sorts of metals. I believe it's aluminum and chrome, which is internal in those thermocouples. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that's what type K are. There's different types of thermocouples that use different types of metals. Um, but they produce like a 30 millivolt charge when the temperature goes up and down. So that's how we're utilizing the interplay with temperature variance, because all these elements on the antenna basically interplay with the environment. That's why when people ask, what does it read on a voltage meter? Well, it's going to vary all the time because all
Right.
the elemental, and that's what we want. We want varied voltage. We want varied feeble voltage. That's truly
Yeah.
what we're
So
after.
essentially like living that way,
Exactly.
like ebbing
It's
and
in
flowing,
it's
you know?
100%. It's interfacing with the environment. It's like has the sort of intelligence. I mean, it's basic.
Yeah.
But it's like steampunk almost in nature. It's like this kind of automaton, but it's very mechanical.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Pyramids have a really like similar effect with that, like the ebbing and flowing of energy. That's why it's called pyramid, which means the fire inside.
Fire in the
It's
center.
like
Yeah.
burning and but the fire in the center, it's like either or. Yeah, I thought that was really interesting, where these, where our paths kind of like cross. That's really awesome. Um,
Well, they're doing the same thing too with the paramagnetic energy, and which is basically called also gravitons, and it's harnessing that energy down.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I mean, when I first, opened this thing up, I was just like, wow, I really just like stared at it for a while and I'm still staring at it. And we've made some progress on our garden here at the homestead we're at right now. And we'll
A lot
definitely
of
be
work.
doing this there. Yeah, it is a lot of work, especially in
Yeah.
Arizona. It's not not ideal, especially because we're the first ones who've ever worked on the soil. So
Thankless to till, as they say.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Um, but I'm probably gonna end up just putting it a couple feet above the ground, or maybe just right on the ground. Um, and yeah, I'll definitely, send you the results of what's going on and the progress. And
cool.
yeah, I'm really excited to see what happens here because I've experimented with like orgonite and stuff, but never anything as all right, we are back on. The Zoom meeting ended. It's kind of annoying that they put the time limit to like 40 minutes, but we are back on now. We were talking about basalt and a couple of things and how orgonite and like real like legit orgonite, crosses paths definitely with electroculture and yeah, I just think that's really awesome. If you don't mind me asking, where do you source your basalt? Because I've been looking for that. That's
Uh,
really the only ingredient that I want to put in my pyramids. Like at this point that I haven't yet, because I've tried literally like hundreds of things and most of the things I don't need. But the basalt is really important in the newer things I'm going to be coming out with, and I really want to find some. You don't have to tell me on here if it's like private or anything, but I was really curious.
I'll send you a link, but it's an agricultural distributor out of Vermont, so I'll hook you up.
Okay, yeah, that would be awesome. It's really powerful stuff. I use similar things like shungite and tourmaline powders and black iron oxide mix, and like other black crystal.
Uh-huh.
But I think the basalt would be a really like integral part. And I'm pretty sure there's a basically like a large hill on forget the mountain, but it's in Flagstaff about an hour north from where I live in Sedona, and it has like a whole side of the mountain is like pure black.
Yeah.
And I haven't been up there in like years, and I definitely want to go explore one of these days here soon, and go grab a bunch of it, because it's
I
just
bet you have a local source. Yeah, I bet you have a local source somewhere closer to you That's typically what I recommend, but
Right.
like
Local materials are
because
always
it's
best.
expensive to ship rock powders.
Okay.
Like most places have a basalt of some sort. Like here's what I always suggest, like find the most epic largest river close to you
Okay.
and get a geological survey map. More than likely, one side of that river is going to be some sort of diamagnetic rock, like a gypsum or limestone or something, and the
Okay.
other side is most likely going to be a paramagnetic rock, granite, basalt. And this varies, but this is a typically a good way to kind of like hone in on where you might find some good basalt or in general paramagnetic rock.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really great idea because I actually literally have a river in my backyard. I live on Oak Creek in Sedona,
Cool.
which is just such a magical, magical place. There's a couple
Oh
other
man,
creeks
I've never
nearby.
been there. It looks awesome.
Oh, you guys are always welcome, if you guys ever want to come out. We live on like
Oh,
five
thank you,
acres and we
thank you.
got like extra space. So we got a lot of abundance here and we're really grateful. But yeah, that's like one of the best creeks in Arizona is Oak Creek, and then there's
So
West
cool.
Clear Creek and Sycamore Creek that are nearby. But yeah, those are definitely
Nice.
all great contenders. I'll definitely check them out. And I even in my backyard, I noticed what
Yeah,
you're talking about with the different types of rocks on each side. That's super accurate because one side is like granite, like literally what you said, and the other is like all like red dirt and other things. And I thought that was just really interesting,
yeah,
like the difference between
yeah.
the two sides.
And you'll find clay. Clay is like a very balanced. Make clay is like the center. And it's very interesting when you get into the metaphor of like, okay, again, heaven, earth, and heaven energy would
Yeah,
be our paramagnetic rock. Earth
yeah,
energy would be our diamagnetic rock. But clay is that equal fluxing of magnetic phase, basically a balance. And that's why it takes form. So it's just like being like the idea of being made of clay, like these metaphors you find even in like Hebrew uh, traditions and biblical traditions and all these metaphors of like the clay form, like or even in some alchemical conditions traditions with kind of like abiological life, they would call it. Um, Homunculus type
I
stuff,
was literally
all
about to
kind of,
say the
but
word
it's
homunculus. I'm
basically
just
like,
like, so
yeah,
few people know what that
yeah,
is,
yeah,
it's so funny. I kind of I
yeah,
felt like I was reading your mind. I was like, oh, I'm feeling homunculus. I'm about to say it. It's 555 on my phone.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, that's
And it's
that's really
555 right
interesting.
behind you on that on those glass
Oh
pieces
yeah,
too.
that's
On right
right.
behind you,
Double
555.
double 555.
Yeah, crazy.
That's really funny.
Nice, nice. So
That's
yeah, man, that's the cool thing about clay. Like my wife does pottery, and so it's like a really interesting, just interesting concept to observe,
yeah,
like
yeah.
the
So
magnetic phase of rocks through
yeah,
agriculture, through artistry, through everything. Yeah.
right. Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm like processing a lot of what you're saying too, because it's really, really interesting stuff, and it kind of like goes hand in hand with what I guess I've learned on my journey. And I was gonna ask too, is the clay on the same side as the granite when it comes to a river? Is it on the opposite end?
Well, I guess that might vary.
Okay, because
That
on
might
one
just
side
vary.
it's like a red clay on mine, and the others is like, a bunch of oak trees, and then just granite
Mhm.
and leaves, and just it's pretty thick in that.
Yeah,
It's very opposite, like I was saying. It's like
very interesting. Yeah. Well, I think there's other elemental interplays.
sure, yeah,
So when you go back to those kind of like they used to call it abiological, but I don't agree with that term. I just think that it's very microscopic or nanoscopic type actions of the same yin and yang interplay that were just unobservable by the eye or by equipment of that time. So it was labeled a because they couldn't witness a male and female, but it's still there. It's just they couldn't see it. But it's just like the theories about like frogs, about how basically they're so there were some theories that frogs were basically kind of generated out of swamp gases interplaying with different temperatures and broken down leaf debris in a swamp,
Yeah,
right? And then
homunculus.
people
That's
would have bought,
yeah,
yeah.
essentially.
So similar, similar,
Well, it's,
similar. So
well, the
yeah, exactly,
homunculus is the
exactly.
copying the natural concept of that, basically. Kind of like how Big
Okay,
uses
yeah,
chemistry to copy something isolated from different plants, and they make their stuff. It's just chemistry, which chemistry is
yeah,
really alchemy in disguise. But that's like a whole other,
100%,
it's
yeah,
a
for
whole
sure.
other whole other conversation.
Well,
But
and alchemy coming from the word that basically or directly, not basically, references the dark, rich soils of the of the valley of the Nile River Valley,
mhm,
which is most likely in reference to actually the Euphrates, which is what we would call the Mississippi.
mhm.
But that being another whole bag of worms,
Yeah,
whatever you
yeah,
look at it, you look at all these rich, yeah, you look at all these rich river valleys that are even like the Willamette Valley in Oregon, all these places that are, I mean, the Mississippi River Delta valleys are very known for agriculture. The Willamette Valley in Oregon, um, the Nile River Valley in Egypt and Ethiopia, very fertile places, very, very productive. And that is because you have in those deltas all that humus, all that imprintable carbon from broken down leaves, from decaying carbon of all sorts, breaking down in the water and flowing down into those rich paramagnetic soils. And what really happens is a flux of magnetic polarity, so or magnetic phase rather. So like you take lime, like lime is a very common agricultural additive. Lime,
right.
ground dolomitic limestone.
Yeah, I actually use
That's
that in it.
and people will, yeah, yeah, and it's a great rock. But farmers will use it to they'll say they use it to adjust the pH, which is true. It does change the parts hydrogen, but that's kind of a byproduct of what it's really doing, which is increasing temporarily the exchange of cations and anion, the exchange of positive ions in the atmosphere and the negative ions in the soil. It's increasing that rate and it's increasing the ability of the soil to hold on to cations, kind of like a battery, so that can continue that exchange. Um, it does it very temporarily. And the change of parts hydrogen is a chemical reaction to electrical action,
Right.
both in the body and in soil. So that being said, they can observe and very easily test pH and be like, okay, well, it's the pH that did it. We'll know it was the increase in electrical exchange. And really what that is an increase in vibration because the exchange of positive and negative is the fluxing of potentials, which is vibration. And when you increase that, you raise the vibration of soil. So literally, that's what you do with adding lime, but it's very temporary when you use that bagged processed lime. But when you add raw basalt in a humus rich environment, what happens very quickly, and you can test this out by putting a big scoop of basalt in a compost pile and then digging it back out 6 weeks later, you can observe that that very dark gray or almost black basalt has fluxed potentials into very white nascent lime, newly birthed lime that is full of energy and potential to increase the cation exchange of the soil for long periods of time. So it's actually that fluxing of phase that's made possible by humus, which is kind of a scalar and component in agriculture
Wow.
that increases fertility, and that also increases the transmutation of ammoniums into usable nitrogens. They call that fixing nitrogen. Um, Whereas the ammoniums, if they're allowed to bioaccumulate, will make the soil toxic, just like where like ruminant animals have been urinating for a long period of time.
Right.
That can become toxic. It has to be restored. to grow things there. That's ammonia that's caused that.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
that's no
but
good.
e Yeah, but even on a much, even if there's no animals, that ammonium does build up over just carboniferous plant life, whatever, decaying. Ammonia is part of that process. But those ammoniums can be fixed into nitrogens through they are naturally through the exchange from the atmosphere. But then with the electroculture system is biomimicking and manufacturing that effect 24/7 on a very
Right.
nice, even, steady level. And that's really the core of the benefit. And what you have as subsequential benefits is by using those ammoniums and converting them into free nitrogen, you get great growth. You also mitigate the bioaccumulation of ammoniums
Wow. Okay, so you do that with
when
basalt,
they're
by the way. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
well, with the electroculture systems in general, more so than with the basalt acts to basically turn your soil into a better capacitory medium.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah,
Yeah,
that makes
yeah, yes, and it will increase that cation exchange as well. But the addition of it all together, and I promote those systems together. I promote certain additions to soil with the electroculture to have a harmonious system, that works well together.
okay.
But when the ammoniums get too much in the soil, too bioaccumulated, plants release abundance of infrared light, and pests see that as a calling card for an easy target as a weak plant, and will go
Wow.
attack those plants. And then subsequently, those pests spread soil-borne disease because they crawl from the soil to the aerial leaves. So this is a domino effect that can happen, of detriment if ammoniums bioaccumulate and whatnot. But in converse, there's a domino effect of benevolence when you add paramagnetic minerals and electroculture systems. Um, all those things are mitigated. And we observed that so directly on such a profound level that it became kind of like, well, we've got to share this on a basic level just to other people trying to do agriculture. And then also, as I got into making the equipment, it was just filling a need really for like comprehensive equipment, just like
Yeah.
that's built with the same way you do with your organiting with your pyramids. I mean, you build every part of it was with intention. Every part of it is to specific dimensions, biogeometry. Every little component is thought through, and that's because you want to feel good about what you're doing, you know.
Right. Yeah, and
This
really
is
be
this
confident in it and follow the ancient principles, just as you are.
Yes.
Like, there's so many similarities I've noticed just, like hanging out with your antenna that you sent me, with like old world buildings and different old world like technologies. There's really not much out there like still today about like ancient electroculture. I think a lot of it's been like destroyed or it's just not online. Maybe go to like, you know, I don't know, like the onion sites or something to find it, to find old books, like on the dark web,
Yeah,
to
yeah,
find, like
yeah.
libraries, like hidden libraries, because those are out there. But yeah, it's really similar to a lot of this kind of stuff and this ancient stuff. And I'm honestly so amazed. I'm still really, really observing it. I still have it in my hand, and it's awesome, man. It really is such an
Thanks,
advanced
bro.
thing that I really believe is gonna like take off. And it's only a matter of time before like my stuff and your stuff really takes off. Like I really believe that. I really believe like we're pioneering really important things for like the future of the world. And it's like it's really like
Yeah,
holy work,
same.
if you will.
Yeah. It feels right. It feels in line, and that's my gauge usually. So, and
Definitely.
I think we're destined to collaborate on some stuff too, man.
Oh yeah, we're gonna have to create some
You know,
awesome stuff together. Yeah, have a bunch of
yeah,
things.
I have some stuff in mind that we'll discuss.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, there's a little lag
Same, same.
in the meeting. We
Perfect.
said actually the same thing at the same time. That's funny. We both have some cool ideas.
Yeah, no, I realized that. Yeah, cool, man. Yeah, no, I like using all these things in agriculture is like also I think so much fun, and like agricultural work is so, I mean, it's so laborious and difficult and physical and tiresome that I think like keeping it fun and keeping things like engaging and using different methods and techniques is like, it's kind of the only reason. There was a point where I kind of was like, man, I don't know, I'm gonna have to really start applying all these facets into coalescence of a practice, or I'm not gonna be able to keep farming like this. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not, it's not crazy money. It's not, there's nothing about it that's just like, wow, you know what I mean? It's just, I mean, it's fulfilling in a very deep way, but it's, when you get real with it and you do it for, like I said, this will be our 12th year, year round, there's like, we're year round producers. So it's very little break, and I say that only to say that like employing all these orgone technology, tensor technology, electroculture for sure, radionics, paramagnetic minerals, all these different things that some may see as, uh, you know, peripheral are actually some of the most amazing results. Applying these things comprehensively, which is the difference. Like we're not just willy-nilly do, I mean, do whatever, experiment. I promote everyone to get their own empirical data. I'm not here to tell anybody what is and what isn't.
Right.
That's, I'm actually kind of here at this point with electroculture for people who are ready to actualize. Like you're ready
Okay.
to do it.
Yeah.
You're kind of at the point
100%.
where you're ready to go. Let's go. I try to
Plugged it in.
provide things that I find valuable as proof and as things, but I'm certainly not here to prove that. That's a personal endeavor.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
then
That
once
makes
you're ready
complete
to go,
sense.
let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're ready for it. You have it grounded in. That's funny. I share like the same perspective on my work as well, and I think that's
I
like
noticed that.
uh,
Yeah.
you just be like grounded in, because you don't want it to be guesswork. If you're doing work that's really gonna like change and impact the world, like you got to really hone in and ground in and um have like discernment in that. I think that's like it comes with experience and yeah, but I
It
think
takes a minute
obviously,
to get there. Yeah,
yeah,
because yeah.
all the
You
masters who
want everybody to
only
get what
have
you're,
it.
yeah, you want everybody to get what you're saying, but at the same time, you really, really just want to speak to your audience because it's like, well, who's ready to go? Because that's kind of what I'm here to fulfill. So let's go. If you're still over here on the fence, I'll help you with what I can, but it's certainly not my job or my responsibility or my privilege to prove things that I know. You know what I
Right.
mean? So it's like I always try to provide good information, solid stuff, and show results here and there. But more than anything, it's like, God forbid, try it out. You know what I mean? Try something out, give it a go, and watch a result. You know what I mean? That's really what you
Yeah,
got to do.
100%. You just got to dive in, and that's
Yeah.
awesome. That's really awesome that you just dove in and you have like the farming experience and all the things combined. And if you were,
It took
um,
it took all those elements.
it took all what?
It took all those elements to really like, I feel like, put together good systems because there's just a lot of stuff about electroculture that as even probably like just avid gardeners kind of realize that's not really gonna uh, like, there's certain things that work to certain scales. There's certain things that kind of just don't follow maxims of electrical antenna theory, things like that.
Right, definitely.
And like and then also then taking those things and applying them comprehensively and usably to agriculture. So you kind of have to have a foot in both worlds and be able to like see, okay, yeah, that's a great idea, but then that's a pain in the ass when it comes to applying that to a field of crops. And you have to know like, okay, this is a usable way to do this with all the maxims respected.
Right. Yeah, that's really important to like understand, I think. And which leads me to like a couple questions I've been thinking as I've been
Sure.
listening. So if you don't mind, could you share like your setup, how everything works on your farm, if you don't mind, like as like a living example of like a really solid like electroculture farm setup?
Yeah, I mean, so in reference to specifically the setup, yeah. So I have antennas set up um, virtually every 20 feet. There are a few, and that's going to be an east to west 20 feet span because the antennas are oriented with the brass rods facing south. Those are the telluric collection rods. That's earth current. Um, so again, that's not a height dependent feature. Um,
Okay.
you'll notice behind the brass rod are interchangeable plates of copper and zinc. That's a voltaic stack. Alessandro Volta invented the first batteries. The first batteries were just stacks of zinc and copper with a wire at the end. They interchange electrochemically,
Wow.
different metals. Zinc and copper are kind of the most basic until you get into some other really high-end expensive metals that would make
Yeah.
pricing go up. And
Yeah.
so yeah, trying to keep things like usable for farmers and gardeners in a price range too. That's part of it because we could get really wild with
Oh
gold.
yeah,
We
you
could
could
go
get
really,
real wild.
and I love that. Maybe one day, but so yes, the antennas are all oriented with the brass rods facing south. Um, the current runs positive to negative, south to north. Um, so they're all connected to ground lines, which are galvanized steel wire, 12 gauge wire lines that run in the soil. Most of mine run around 16 or 18 inches deep. I use a BCS walk behind tractor for all my soil work. I use a tiller and I use a harrow. So I just basically I have that depth because that's kind of substantially deeper than my maximum depth I ever go with soil prep. I mean, I go nowhere near that deep, but it's just in case. All anyone really needs to do is be deeper than they plan to cultivate.
Okay.
So if they only plan to cultivate 6 inches, they only need to be under there 7, 8 inches officially,
That makes sense.
technically. Yeah. So you just try not to hit your wire with your tools. You know what I mean?
Right.
And yes, like there's a lot of discussion and kind of ideas of like using copper tools. Copper tools are great, but they don't make sense for plowshares and tiller tines and
Right.
harrow blades because it's too soft of a metal. It will just break. It will just it won't hold a
Right.
blade. So that's a lovely, lovely idea. You could get away with like hand tools being copper. So if that's,
Right. That's really what I think
um,
people are meant or what people mean, not like the legit
yeah.
farm equipment.
Well, no,
Oh, oh really? People say that? Huh.
there are currently videos online where a certain gentleman is kind of saying like use copper like he doesn't farm, he doesn't even have potted plants in his windows, but he's promoting what kind of equipment farmers should be using without any context. So it's really I'm just speaking on it because I literally saw it this week.
Oh, oh
Um,
wow. That's really
so
interesting.
no, and I love the idea, don't get me wrong, but it a pure copper plowshare or tiller tine would just get so rounded out and
Oh
soft and
yeah,
bend, and
definitely.
it's not going to work.
Definitely.
That being said, my ground lines run deeper than I need to ever work soil. Um, I have my antennas roughly every 20 feet east to west. I have my farm broken into like most of my property is wooded, and then I have like 4 acres up here that are clear, and that has gardens spread out around it because when we started farming here, we only owned half this property, and it was originally one farm and got divided. We bought the half with the house on it at first, and then over some time, we're able to get the other half. Befriended the owner. He carried the note. It was a whole cool thing. I went and paid them monthly at their house for years until I paid
Awesome.
for it. And yeah, so it's
That's how
cool.
it
It
should
has an
go.
old graveyard on. Yeah, it's good. And so I have more gardens than I started with, over time, and they're spread out in different blocks. And probably only have about 2 acres in vegetable gardens spread out with it, counting my orchard. So it's not huge, but the way we produce is highly intensive. Um, like violent abundance, especially since we incorporated the electric. It's actually insane how much you can produce.
Yeah, I
If
bet.
systems are dialed in and cultivars are dialed in for your area, it's pretty insane. But my antennas are spread out roughly every 20 feet east to west on 25-foot sectional poles I like to use. Um, they're very lightweight sectional metal poles. People use them for flags too. You could get flag poles, basically the same thing.
Okay.
Um, it's kind of the most cost-effective way to go about it because like a flag pole might, like a 25-foot pole might cost you like $80.
Okay. Yeah,
Um,
that's not bad.
yeah, and if you're wanting to get up 25 feet, that's kind of your only sensible option for most people because it just sets in a regular post hole with some concrete. It has a sleeve that sits down into it. And then I on my installation videos, I show where I build the whole pole, mount everything as a unit, and then I literally go take the whole big 20-foot unit and set it on top of the sleeve, and it's like super quick. But this way, the pole doesn't weigh a lot. You can get them up high for the aerial mount antennas. My farm has got the aerial antennas basically every 20 feet, except for a few spots where there's weird gaps or walkways, and it's maybe a little different spacing, but roughly every 20 feet with lines running south to north, the full distance as far as I can, basically within 5 or 10 feet of the woods line.
Wow.
Um, and then I have CW2s and other models set up on some of my trellis crops as additional instruments. I have some on trees. I have antennas that are hooked up to compost tea reservoirs, which I have videos about,
Yeah, yeah, I've seen
which
those. And
basically
those some
is,
of the
yeah,
first
yeah,
things I saw about on your page.
yeah. So just staying, I do things within a certain maximum of operations, like a certain maximum of ideas, and those things are so applicable that I've just found ways to kind of broaden the use. Now, do I have anything on my website about using them with a compost tea reservoir? No. I stick to promoting pretty straightforward electroculture usage just because until the masses really understand and adopt it, I'm trying not to be like, and do this and do that. But I
Yeah,
do
yeah,
share things that I do to share with those who are ready for that and who are understanding of these concepts and
right.
frequency induction for weed control, different things that I'm, inspired by people like Phil Callahan, who wrote about this back in the 90s and was like basically suggesting that at some point we'll have digital instruments we can, and we do now. So it's like, let's go try this stuff that he's suggesting that he was doing with very analog type. He basically designed some tiller tines that when they were running with the machine would vibrate at 720 hertz in order to prevent certain phylums of weed seeds from sprouting.
Wow.
And he did a lot of experiments on it with a farmer in Australia, like very extensive metrics
That's really
observed and
cool. It
recorded.
reminds
And
me
he
of
shared
Raymond
those
Rife.
in his,
I'm sorry,
yeah,
it was
exactly.
delayed a
Yeah.
little bit,
Yeah.
the connection.
No, no, it's good. Yeah. Raymond Rife's work. Is that who you're speaking of?
Oh yeah, I was just saying it reminds me of that, with frequencies being applied for different, purposes.
Yeah. Yeah. I began training kung fu with a kung fu teacher when my son was 7. He accepted me and my son as his students. And he really only would accept a few students at a time. So it's really cool. Amazing teacher, like one of the best amazing Shaolin Kung Fu practitioners I've ever seen in person and a great teacher. And turns out, like I realized pretty quickly he was very eccentric. Um, Over a pretty quick amount of time starting to train with him, he started kind of requesting some kind of things that to me at the time were a little odd, like wanting, well, will you hold this pendulum over this? He would take photographs from a computer and shrink them down really tiny so that you didn't know what they were, but it's still the same photograph, right? Photographic energy. And long story short, he was trying to see if I could dowse photographs. And then turns out he's a radionics genius
Oh wow.
and builds some of the most amazing machines and has some of the most vast proprietary frequency knowledge in the world. And then turns out he really needed an assistant, and I was fortunate. I wasn't looking for this education. I didn't know anything about Rife, anything about frequency medicine. Um, I was going to learn Kung Fu and Qigong, mostly Kung Fu, martial arts, and
Mhm.
martial style. And I ended up getting a very vast education over several years on frequency application. He taught me about Hieronymus, and he taught me about a lot of stuff that he taught me about a lot of stuff that even took years for me to really get into. And now I operate several operate a Rife machine with many modalities and um, do remote work with people for those as well. And it's very cool. Like
That's
it all
amazing.
tied in. Like it was critical information that I didn't know I needed. You know what I mean?
Sounds divinely orchestrated.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, for your path, man.
Yeah, and it was a very interesting style of education because yeah, yeah, and he also happens to be like just an extremely vastly like a polymath type, but also extremely like extreme biblical historian, like a very vast array of knowledge that he had all put together as kind
Yeah,
of one unified, and it was very, 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 I still am close with him. I don't see him as much as I used to, but um, so I ended up kind of inadvertently getting that in the mix with the agriculture and the qigong, and it was a very bridging type of education that made some things possible later with more modern technology and modern equipment that I probably wouldn't really get because I'm not really techie, you know, like
yeah,
per
yeah,
se.
yeah. That's really interesting, all that you said. I have another question I wanted to ask too. I haven't looked at
Oh
my
yeah,
notes.
please,
I really
please.
appreciate all that you're sharing. I'm like processing all that you're saying because like again, like I said before, I mean, there's just so much knowledge and wisdom you have, and even listening to you, you just said it was like a missing piece that was like, brought to you. It's like I feel that way, like listening to all that you're saying now, and it's
Oh, thank you, thank you,
knowledge.
thank you.
Knowledge is like in Hawaii they call it like coconut wireless. It kind of just passes on and on. It's knowledge is always
Oh, I
moving,
love that.
flowing, ebbing
That's
and flowing
cool.
in and of
Yeah,
itself. But yeah. So I've seen a couple,
I love that term.
right? Yeah, yeah, it's a fun one. I've seen a lot of really small properties, even like a quarter acre, produce insane amounts of food. So I can only imagine like what you can produce where you're at. Do you publicly like sell your food? Do you do like farmers markets? I would love to share, like if anyone listening is like local, they could come buy some food from you if
Oh,
that's
thanks.
an
Yeah, that
offer.
would be rad. Yeah. Well, so we definitely sell our produce. Our farm is White Squirrel Farm, and we're in Bethpage, Tennessee, which is Sumner County, north of Nashville, about an hour. I grew up in Nashville and very near downtown.
Okay, I love it.
Um,
It's an amazing place. My mom's
yeah,
side,
it's not
my
a bad
family
place.
life.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And we sell primarily to at this point we sell primarily to a restaurant, and then we have a CSA group. We had another decade-long restaurant customer that unfortunately the restaurant itself, for other reasons, is closed as of this past year. But
Yeah.
so just personally, full disclosure, like I'm really trying to maintain the farm business on the level it's at with my CSA, but that is how people can participate is through the CSA program as
Okay.
individuals.
Nice.
So
Well,
that
that sounds great. Sorry,
yeah.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, no, no. There's just a lag on the audio. Otherwise, it wouldn't be an issue. I keep trying to be quiet, then I'll be like, okay, now, and they're like, no, he just talked.
I know, right? I'm
Um,
trying to figure out the best software or program for this. We're on Zoom for those listening, and we only got like 4 minutes again on this one.
okay,
We might
okay,
have to. I don't know how long the second meeting in one day, like the time you have to wait for the next to start the
okay,
meeting.
okay.
So, I mean, potentially you might have to finish tomorrow or later,
That's fine. That's
whatever
fine.
works. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's amazing what you're talking about. If you don't mind sharing, what's the name of the restaurant? People could maybe go eat out at the
Yeah, the for sure. The name of the restaurant is Lachlan Table, and it's in East Nashville on Woodland Street.
Lachlan
And
table.
we've been selling produce to them since the little neighborhood's called Lachlan Springs. That's the
Okay,
names of
I
the name.
totally want to go eat there now.
And actually, coincidentally, the restaurant used to be an old barber shop, and it's on the block of the house that I was born in, and where I got my first haircut, and like as a youth, just very coincidentally, or maybe not, but that's our primary best customer for nearly 12 years. Like they started their restaurant the year we started our farm, And we were living in California and bought this property with the intention to start our farm pretty much as a way to raise our son in a way that we wanted to raise him. Really, that was our primary motivation for starting a farm. Um, and so we bought this property actually without ever seeing it ourselves. I had some family come look at it and stuff, and it was a very good price. And we bought it and moved here sight unseen and started building a propagation house like the day after we got here because there was no infrastructure. And we grew and sold produce that year. We got here March 1st of that year, and we sold a whole season's worth of it was pretty
Wow,
wild.
that's
It was pretty
awesome.
wild.
You guys
Yeah, it
are
was pretty
committed to
wild.
the
Yeah,
craft.
it was very rough. It was very rough, like for like 5, 6 years, like very hard, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Until
yeah,
you kind of
I
get good at
understand.
something. Because if you think about it, like even like we grow like 20, 30 different crops, but you think about even a monocropper who just plants corn, right? And they do that for 30 years. They've only really planted corn 30 times. Like
Yeah,
that's not many times to do something. So you
no,
have
not
to
so
get
many.
good. You have to get good at doing stuff in like minimal times trying. Like it's a different, and you
Yeah,
have to always be so far ahead because like if you want money in spring, you do a lot of that work in winter. If you want money in fall, you do most of that work in the summer. You're always kind of like way ahead because you're starting crops in the propagation house, you're prepping, buying them. You're doing everything ahead. So like um it's challenging in those ways. And we found so much assistance with loss, especially through pest loss and disease loss with electroculture that it's really kind of the unsung hero effect of it is like the lack of disease and pests. It's definitely not about growing gigantic vegetables. They do get large, they do get nice. That's just a ploy kind of misunderstanding
yeah,
because most
marketing
things
maybe.
aren't, yeah. Yeah, and now they're back in the day they actually used a warning to farmers when they were really trying to fight against electroculture because what they really wanted to do was after the world wars was sell a bunch of excess ammonium nitrate as fertilizer. That's why you say today people be like, you can make a bomb out of going to get some fertilizer. Well, that's because it was bomb materials to begin with that were
Okay.
deconstructed as fertilizer. And now you're just putting it back together like they meant to be. So it's really the war on our soils is literally munitions created with the intent to kill people is what was promoted, ammonium nitrate, very quick, usable nitrogen, but it's ammonium nitrate. So you have ammonium buildup. So you have pests come in. So what's the answer to that? Glyphosate, Roundup, blah, 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 blah. So you see how this benefits the whole pharmaceutical agricultural
Yeah,
system.
it sounds like a
Yeah,
whole
so
shit show. All right, we are back on. The Zoom call had ended again. We were just talking about kind of the shit show that is like modern farming and like mono ag farming and all that kind of stuff. Um, yeah, it's really there's I see it as a great opportunity even for people like you and I who can really bring light to a very big need that the world has. That's basically like the best entrepreneurs solve the biggest needs, right? And so I think that's a
yeah,
big need, like for really
yeah.
both of our work, and they kind of go hand in hand. So I think that's so cool, and how you could even take like an open-minded person who has like just like a super normal farmer and like transform them essentially as long as they're open-minded.
Yeah, and you'll find that actually I live in a very rural, in the South, like most of my neighbors are nothing like me. Um,
Yeah.
we get along pretty well, and actually a lot of them are wide open to like a lot of them actually, the older ones remember things that were, I won't say exactly like what I'm doing, but along these lines. They also inherently understand certain concepts simply through, I won't even say understand it academically sometimes, but understand them in a more important way in their heart. And like I have a neighbor talking about how his granddad, great granddad, always told everybody who inherited this farm that he now has to leave this rock pile by the barn because this rock pile gets struck by lightning constantly, but the
Wow.
barn never gets struck. And he was telling me this, and I was like, is it limestone? And he was like, sure is. I was like, his granddad intuitively knew that the limestone would be the most inherently obvious target for that spark gap being a diamagnetic rock in a pile
Wow.
in a pyramid like even conical pile. There's so many aspects to it when you really
Yeah, yeah.
break it down. And it just so happens this guy also happens to be the head of all the linemen for Nashville Electric Service, and
Wow.
he even went to their main engineer there and showed him my website and some stuff, kind of just being like, look at this kind of neat, kind of weird stuff my neighbor does. And
That's
the
really
guy was
awesome.
like, the guy was like, well, that's spot on. And I mean, I'm not saying that for any other reason to say that there's people out here in more mainstream society or old agriculture that get it. And when our last segment ended, what I was getting at is basically they were trying to sell the ammonium nitrate, but they were also when they were warning farmers that um, they may overproduce if they use electroculture, and that would lead to prices going down. Right? So it's like fear mongering,
Right,
problem reaction solution,
right,
Hegelian dialectic.
right. Marketing.
Uh, you know,
Right.
yeah, just all kind of deceit. But that's the thing. We know that. We know there's all kind of snakes on the plane. And we could sit here and just like you were speaking to, we could sit here and we could talk about how bad it all is, right? And
Right.
that's even within our world. And I say that as in not that we're in, but within this world of I won't even say I'll say like antiquitech in this world of people remembering old technologies or modern applications of old technologies or old concepts from Oregon to all the stuff we're talking about frequency medicine,
Yeah.
electroculture. You have a lot of pessimism and you have a lot of just like this is the problem, this is the problem, this type of agriculture is bad, but you have very few people offering solutions, and that's why like I call it solutionary electroculture because it's not the solution to everything, but it's a solution to a small group of issues. And if everybody kind of focused on to some degree that mentality in their field, then we'd have a bunch of solutions compounding into a very solutionary, less problematic existence. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's just logical, that we would find ways to apply this very pragmatically.
Yeah, there's such a huge, huge market and opportunity for that. I think that's just so crucial and for the future of like the world even. And I want to get into some questions too. Were
Yes,
you
please.
finished with explaining the ammonium
Oh
nitrate?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. I wasn't trying to go deep into that, but just into that, um there were some kind of contrived reasons why electroculture fell off, in the late 1800s.
Yeah,
There was a lot going
definitely.
on with the Industrial Revolution at the
Oh yeah.
time, for lack of a better term, and basically the corporatization of all nations combined to, you know, take to exploit humanity. I mean, that's in a
Well,
broad
yeah, yeah,
sense.
definitely.
So this
That's
was the
definitely.
agricultural wing of that fuckery, and that's where we're at. So,
Yeah, and
but
so it's up to us and the rest of the humans who are sharing Earth with us at this time to do that. If we see
yeah,
it be good. So I think that's like the work. Like this is like what a light worker will say really is, in my opinion. Um, and yeah, I've talked about so many similar concepts too, with like the crystals and things like being revived and like the crystal tech and antiquitech. Like even I don't know what you're doing this call on your end, but I have like a Mac and like the screen of a MacBook is literally a liquid crystal display. It's
yeah,
like melted lab quartz. It's not
yeah,
none of these technologies that with like modern technologies could ever work without some sort of like crystalline material or
yeah.
crystal essentially.
Hmm.
So I think there used to be even more advanced like magical things in the past that use very similar concepts. I think they use it in a very like corporatized way, like almost like the Matrix, where they like twist it into something that it doesn't have to be, because I think that
Hmm.
all these tech that we have nowadays could be built to heal you even,
Yeah,
if it's just
yeah,
slightly tweaked.
yeah.
So it's really interesting, and there's very little research with all of that stuff, but I really believe that to be true.
100%. It's with qigong, like a lot of the kung fu, that's the martial side of qigong. That was all developed basically, and this is as far as I understand it, but I have done quite a bit of research on this. A lot of it was developed by reversing healing techniques. So it's actually a lot of in Kung Fu, in the martial side, you have a long tradition of medical Qigong practitioners or medical Qigong doctors being very proficient in martial arts and being teachers as well, especially with certain styles like White Crane and different styles. But a lot of the mechanisms that were eventually designed to do harm are the reversal of mechanisms that were meant to heal. So a lot of it's medical information in reverse. And that's, uh, kind of just an analogous to a lot of the things we're talking about. A lot of the technology were kind of people like myself who, or maybe yourself too, maybe you consider yourself, I'm going to use a really generic term, but like a naturalist, or you like plants, you like the earth,
Yeah.
but we're intentionally dissuaded from being adoptive of technology kind of because the agenda of what it to be what we could use it for would be different. So like a lot of technology, even for myself, kind of come to grips with, okay, well, if I'm using some of these things for benevolent purposes, then like I can take advantage of it. Or with crystal technologies, you'll find that people are very accepting of certain ways in which they're used and then very skeptical of other ways in which they're used. Like you said, a liquid crystal display. Um, but also you have very common direct usage of pressurized crystal piezoelectric operations like microphones, guitar pickups, um, uh, different mechanisms and different types of appliances.
Wow.
Um, so these things are used kind of watches use, quartz watches use pressure on sometimes rubies or sapphires or different types of small stones. And actually, I remember my granddad teaching me that. Not directly, but he took apart the back of his little quasar quartz watch at one point as a kid and showed me how pressure on this, how there was pressure, this little tiny clamp on this little tiny piece of ruby in there. And it kind of acted as like a battery tender. Like there's still a battery, but that voltage it made the battery have to be changed like twice a year or once a year as opposed to like every month. So
Wow.
it's very, very like integral kind of like concept.
Yeah, yeah, that's
But
definitely
you
powerful
you
stuff.
know, but you find that people are inherently more skeptical when you say, "Oh, I'm going to put pressure on a crystal and use that for agricultural use." It's just it's
Right.
where you find it. So
Right.
that's kind of been my little mission is to try to bring these concepts into very applicable like formats and
Right. And I
try to
also, it
speak many
also
try to
makes
speak
you,
many languages.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that the wisest people essentially do that. And I think that it also keeps you really interesting because people just getting into this stuff, like it's really easy to hold people's attention, if you're really just like showing them and presenting it, and just like, shining and sharing your knowledge, like I've had people look at my like not like conversion rates, but like my video retention, and it's like crazy, and it's like super high. I might not have the most views, but I have like crazy retention rates just because like, and I think it's the same thing you're doing. It's just like essentially you're hard to figure out, but in a good way. Like there's always so much more in your like ocean of like,
Yeah.
if you get what I'm saying, like you have so much to like share, and it keeps it so like interesting. And
I
yeah,
noticed that about
I
your
see that in
videos too. Very substantial. Yeah, very substantial, your videos.
Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Honestly, I think they could be
Yeah,
way,
yeah.
but I'm working on it. It's really like there's an art to
But
like
you point out aspects. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
you point out
Sorry, go
aspects, you
ahead.
said. Oh, no worries. No, I
No,
wasn't
I was
saying.
saying you point out aspects of the technologies that often aren't focused on, and I
Mm,
think that shows like another level of like adeptness because you kind of see in both the world of orgone technology, electroculture, you see a lot of the same stuff kind of hammered on, kind of just beaten to
definitely. Yeah.
death, dead
That's
horse
their fault.
style, and you're like, okay, okay, guys, chill. Let's talk about all these interesting aspects, like all these really amazing realities versus one or two pseudo fantastical qualities. Like, let's talk about all these ways in which this is very like part of our humanity, not so much like other
Absolutely.
than,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
absolutely. I have to, educate a lot of people here in Sedona, crystal shop owners, other like pyramid makers, because they're usually kind of just making like or selling the just like bunk organite or with electroculture even
resin
people are
resin
selling,
art.
yeah, people are selling like the little copper spires that's not even like tensor or anything. It's just like like these are like the most basic concepts, and I think like you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, it's like
But
a
there's like
sparkler on 4th of July. It's a little
yeah,
sparkler,
yeah.
you
So
know.
it's like as long as you and I just like share our wisdom and our voices, like we could really help people, So it's like we have so much awesome stuff to share.
And
Um,
we do it with kindness, I think
of
that's
course,
important.
yeah,
You
that's the
and
whole
that's what you do
philosophy.
as well. Like, yeah, it's like I'm not like someone who doesn't know something, like man, you just don't. There's tons of stuff I don't know.
Oh
And
yeah,
so like,
we know nothing at the
you
end of
know,
the day in the
yeah,
scheme of things,
yeah. Keep I always hope like every 10 years that I hope I feel like I knew nothing prior 10 years.
right?
Like I always hope that I look back 5 or 10 years just into the recent past and think, man, I was really stupid then. But I hope that keeps happening. So honestly, I hope I'm ultimately like super stupid right now. And then
Yeah.
eventually I'll get to where I want to be.
Yeah, well, as the saying
But
goes, you got to be a child to enter the kingdom of heaven. So, I mean, like, I think that's like that frequency of a child is like knowing that you really don't know anything and that you're always going to live in that wander. That's like key too, like while you're like living on earth to really like for anyone to like really do their best to embody that because then you can really just like you're just on a much different energy in life and it's just a better life and better just better all around.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Uh, be like a child and also like standing on your business at the same time. It's like a
100%.
real
Oh yeah.
duality there. It's
Well,
kind of like,
children really
okay,
do kind of stand on their
they
business.
do, man, because they know what they
Yeah,
need, man.
yeah, as a new dad, I definitely know that. But I want to hop into some questions. I have like,
Yes, please. I'm gonna be focused here.
oh
What do you
yeah, for
got?
sure. Let's just like, rocket them all. I got like, probably like 10 questions here. I think
Let's
like
go.
anyone listening to this could go from like a novice to really like understanding like the principles of it. And I really hope that this episode gets out there because this is a really awesome chat we got going on here. So the first question would be, what are the main benefits of electroculture? Just like bullet points, if you could, just like was
Okay,
it
yeah.
fine?
Fixing nitrogen out of ammoniums that leads to faster growth. And faster growth has many levels of benefit, has less time being vulnerable, things like that. It's not just about getting something quick, because I'm speaking from a producer's standpoint,
Right.
but I'm also trying to put myself in other people's standpoint. But it's not about getting something quick, although that may be subsequential. Faster growth, utilization of already present soil minerals. So a lot of things are locked up, not available.
Right.
This electrical action is biomimicking. Just what I always say is everyone knows from farmer to regular people generally understand that after we have an electrical storm, lots of lightning, everything gets super green and lush and grows. Like old folk tales speak of this, it's just kind of known. This
Yeah.
is because all that plasmatic discharge from the lightning produces a lot of an abundance of positive ions in the atmosphere. So there's more than usual. So there's more cation exchange with the negative ions in the earth. And so you get that increase in cation exchange, which leads to the nitrogens becoming available and other minerals changing into their higher potential forms, basically.
Wow.
Especially when there's prolific amounts of humus present. And that's how it works, kind of like scalar, because scalar literally means ascending. So It's about something ascending into its higher potential form. Higher potential form is just based on equilibrium of the soil. So that doesn't mean higher in phylum or higher in order. It means higher in need of in line of necessity. So those
Okay.
minerals will become what's needed. So soil utilizing already present soil nutrients without having to add them, but also better utilization of added minerals. Um, Less pest, because like I said, the ammonium buildup makes the plants emit infrared light in abundance, specific spectrums of infrared light that draw pests, what you would call pests, bugs that are looking to prey on something. And typically, what we call pests are just bugs that have been introduced from some other area that haven't found their balance in their currently new ecosystem. And this may take hundreds of years for a bug. I don't know. I'm not a bug right now. So, that could, who am I to say how long that should take? So we may view something as a pest and really it's just a bug that got brought here on a plane or a boat and now has have offspring and they don't really have a place situated. They're trying to find their way, you know. But what we do by not by letting our ammoniums build up is those plants give off a signal that say, "Hey, I'm kind of stressed." And who better to take advantage of than the stressed and worn out plant or the stressed and worn out human being? So they go after that as a target, and then subsequently they also spread soil-borne disease. So you have less disease, you have less pests, faster growth, typically more vibrant and larger fruits and vegetables, but not in some sort of insane way. Their potential to get larger is like a testimony to their vigor, but that's not necessarily your goal with everything.
Right,
Certain
just a
vegetables, yes.
component. Yeah.
Give me a large beet, give me a large sweet potato, something like that. But I don't need a large, extra large cucumber. That's not ideal. So what I'm getting at is it
Sure.
will proliferate, it will allow for things to get larger, but that's not necessarily the goal. Um, Color, vibrance, nutrient density, simply because it's making all these minerals available that are then going to be in the food. Um, so these are the main benefits. These are the main benefits.
Okay, nice. Yeah, that was a much better explanation than most people because I think people just focus on, oh, increase your yields, but it's really
No,
much
it's a
more to
lot
it
of
than
stuff,
that. That
man.
should be like
Yeah.
honored even because it's so cool.
And
Um,
also, you
yeah,
have other sub factors of expedient growth, which, like for a farmer, if the crop grows faster than the weeds, you have less to hoe. So it can literally, for an actual producer or even just someone with a large garden, it can mean hours and hours of time. It can mean human output energy. So it's resources. It's resources across the board. You add less mineral, you add less resources to get more yield out of smaller space.
right.
It's all
Okay,
very regenerative ergonomic
nice. I
type
think
ideas. Yeah.
that's really awesome. The next question would be, is there certain crops or types of crops that respond better to electroculture?
In a sense, yes. You will see root crops respond faster to
Okay,
newly installed systems, and I think that's
that
simply
makes sense.
because you're harvesting the mycorrhizae layer, root versus the aerial part of the crop, and perhaps just because of how simply electromagnetic induction, just like our chi energy, starts from our center and then expands outward around the conductor, like our Wei Chi field, our energy field or biofield. So does the energy from the system's conductor. So it would make sense that it would like affect the roots first. Um, so we do see root crops getting larger faster, but it does have a benevolent effect on all crops. Most certainly, no detriment, like do no harm, just like in medical qigong is kind of the first rule of thumb. It's our first rule of thumb. Also, I definitely do no harm because, like for instance, you do have some crazy amalgamations of electroculture, like the Chinese are doing some wild electroculture with like direct current voltage
Oh
from
wow.
big generators, very quick bursts of high voltage, and it does have effects. but you could definitely kill everything that way. That's
Right.
why we're looking at
Balance.
steady, subtle
Yeah.
voltage. Yeah, like an alkaline battery versus a lead-based acid battery.
Yeah, slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah, yeah,
100%, man. But
yeah.
that makes sense, especially because the wire that's running through the ground soil
Yes,
is closest to the roots too. So that would make
yes,
so
yes.
yeah, root vegetables. Let's see here on the question list. If somebody is like just getting into this, they're just now learning, like let's say they just got a garden bed in their backyard, like where can they first get started?
Well, humbly, I would highly recommend my website, thefertilecurrent.com, simply because I've tried to make a lot of basic information available. Also, my YouTube channel is very non-promotional based. It's basically information on how to set systems up in all sorts of environments. So I have tons of installation videos on like field crops, like small farm or big garden scenarios. I have raised box bed scenarios showing how you would navigate all the different variables of these different types of gardens. I have just kind of greenhouse applications, installations. I have videos on how to mark out where your lines are so that if you plan on installing trellis poles or T-posts for trellis, you don't hit your line. Precautionary techniques. Basically, like over the years, have cataloged a lot of information that I've just kind of weeded through and try to share the really important applicable stuff because there's a lot of like there's a basic idea and then there's lots of little things that are going to come along as questions to those who actually go and apply it. So like
Sure.
I
Yeah.
said, since I'm kind of focused on those applying, I have basically I have how you would set up in containers, how you would set it up on a single tree, how you would set it up in an orchard, like trying to always reinforce the principal maxims and then showing how you would adapt to a new scenario or a new type of garden, basically. Um, and that's basically, I mean, I would definitely look at like, Justin Christopher's old book, Electroculture. It's going to be very intriguing, very interesting. And I think there's some great information in that book. As far as being able to take that book and be like, okay, let me go put this in my garden, you know, some might totally get that and some most likely won't. So I've tried to kind of take a lot of this information and make it little bit easier.
Yeah, yeah.
But to be honest, there's not a lot of good resources. I'm working on putting out more resources. And I also help people personally and consult them and help them with plans.
Yeah, you're the
Certainly
guy.
yeah, certainly my customers too. I mean, if someone buys stuff from me, like I'm going to make sure I'm there to help them get it put
Yeah,
in
yeah. I
correctly.
definitely want to send you as much support as I can because I really believe in what you're doing. Is there a specific product you'd recommend for just like the everyday backyard garden bed that you make?
Yes, well, yes, I highly recommend. This is going to kind of somewhat be to the preference of the user, the customer, the gardener, on how high they want to put an antenna. Some
Okay.
people definitely want to take advantage of the atmospheric electricity,
Yeah.
maximize it.
Hmm.
I have all these antennas do virtually the same thing, but they each have strong points and they have ways to maximize them as individual models. If someone wants to really harness atmospheric electricity, they would want to use the CW1. Also, if they're into or kind of have a fondness for the legacy antennas from the late 1800s, this would be the most similar to that with the wire array on top. So I call this one pulling down heavens, the CW1. And then I have a plus model of all my antennas, which just include a Lakovsky ring on the north face, which just happens to work out perfectly in the way those are aligned. And that will just add subtle voltage. But otherwise, what I'm getting at is the CW1, the CW2, or the CW3, or the plus versions of those antennas are all going to be great. It just really depends on what height. If they want to mount it lower, which is going to be convenient for a lot of people, then I would go with a CW2 or a CW3. The CW2 is a smaller antenna, so if you have a smaller garden I would go with the CW2. If you have a larger garden, CW3.
Perfect.
I make a yeah, and I make a CW4 model, and that's can also be used in these same ways, but is more geared toward using on container plants indoors, and it also has a frequency generator connection for experimental radionics. Like you can generate the frequencies of elemental nutrients, like elemental nitrogen, um, and generate their frequency into the soil. And according to radionic science, that would be the same as applying that mineral.
Okay, nice. Yeah, this is really useful information.
And kind of a long answer, I know,
Oh
but
no, no, it's okay.
for
Take your
but
time. The
yeah,
only thing I'm concerned about time is the just the Zoom.
yeah,
Other than that,
yeah. No,
um,
I'll try to keep it short here.
sure, yeah, no worries. No, don't hold back. Like I'm always like, this podcast safe space for whatever, for anybody to speak. So the next question would be, do you know of any, for the naysayers or skeptical people, do you know of any
Uh,
like scientific studies that are even, ballpark electroculture or certain things? Because there's a few out there very
sure.
about organite and orgone energy, but they're out there.
Yeah,
I'm sure they're out there with electroculture too.
yeah. They are. There's quite a bit of old writings that will be hard to really find and to find in a comprehensive whole collective manner. I honestly, the most intriguing answer to that, I think, would be if you Google electroculture, China, they have tons of studies.
Okay, beautiful.
Now, granted, disclaimer, most of it, almost all of it, what they're doing is a wild amalgamation, not free energy based.
Okay,
It's
so
not what we're
it's
doing. It's not what we're doing, but it's very metric data. Like I have tons of like data, but it's empirical data. I've logged it. I understand it. It's not the same metric data that they've collected on yields. But what you'll see is the World Economic Forum has tons of articles, or at least several, published on this topic and how basically how I mean, as a nation, they're like really dominating agriculture, using these very principles.
wow.
And they're trying to kind of like, I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense. It's like the communist version of electroculture. It's kind of taking the
Yeah,
spirituality out of it, I guess. I don't know, to some degree, we're taking
yeah,
the
yeah,
heaven
for
and
sure.
earth out of ironically a concept that spent a lot of time in ancient China, like Taoist concepts. But
Yeah,
um, I
yeah,
don't consider those concepts, just like traditional Chinese medicine is not inherently Chinese. It's just they did the best job of writing it down when they
correct.
really
Yeah,
held that information in their time. This is also Kemetic in a lot of Arabic culture, Persian culture. This has like been all over the place. And we're holding a lot of it right now here in this continent, in the US. I mean, it's not even my idea. It's ideas that I've heard many wise people speak on that
right.
a lot of that stuff is here right now. So
Sure. My next
I
question.
would check that out.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
talk to farmers who actually use it, but the best thing is empirical data. Try it out.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so this is a great foundation of information to help basic understanding, out there.
Yeah.
Even, as long as you have the discernment to, see what's like more natural and what's not. Do you think that
Yes.
electroculture, like let's say like a normal farm, right, is like surrounded by nature and it like drains that um the land of its energy and stuff, and it kind of like wrecks the land over time. But do you believe that like electroculture and like biodynamics, like combining all these, can actually like feed the local energy, like the environment, like to feed it like energetically and help restore it into like a healthier environment?
Yeah, most certainly. I mean, we're kind of number one restoring mineral for agricultural lands that have been heavily used. The addition of paramagnetic, not only the minerals, but also the paramagnetic energy that brought down by the antennas, um, is restoring a magnetic balance that was disrupted by, eons or decades at least of ferromagnetic, like steel implements just churning the soil.
Yeah.
And on those paramagnetic minerals are going to charge toward that and be kind of removed. So we're replenishing, the mineral balance. And oddly enough, I won't say too much on it, but there's use of this type of very, very, very similar technology in mine tailing remediation of lands that have been heavily mined and
Yeah.
minerally just kind of savaged, and can actually convert through electrical action minerals back into precious forms from more crude elements and even semi-toxic levels of um, mineral imbalance. So it's basically an adaptogenic system that will catalyze homeostasis in soil. Um, and like I said, that can mean different things for different soil. Balance
Yeah.
means different things in different situations.
That makes sense. Yeah, I appreciate the explanation.
Yeah.
Next up, just two more would be what is, is there anywhere in the world that's kind of like not revived, but like maintain some of this knowledge and still practice it? Like any country or any tribe?
I have a feeling there's just somewhere some tribe group of people that probably do that that I don't know about.
Sure. I
I
mean, the
have
Native
I
Americans did some form of electroculture
Yeah,
one way, and
I've
then,
heard, I know that it was big in Russia a long time ago.
yeah, the ancient
Um,
Tartaria.
I had a, well, even that long ago, but even not that long ago,
Sure.
like a gentleman that I know, I've spoken with, who said there was photos of his grandmother or great grandmother with these systems, basically very similar to our setup in their gardens. I don't know to what degree they're possibly retaining that, but that would kind of make sense with the location of possible Tartaria, where that would be like a more localized remnant of that civilization who might remember that longer than perhaps other areas geographically. Um, that being said, Ireland has a long tradition of utilizing paramagnetic towers.
Yeah, that was.
That's a little bit more recent than others. A lady from Ireland told me that in school they were taught that those towers were for hiding from the Vikings.
Oh
And I
wow.
was like, so you guys are gonna pile up in
Sure.
there? And even she was like, yeah, it's a load of crap. But
Sure they
we
were.
just wait outside. Are you gonna pile vertically in a tower? Like, because if you've seen them, they're just big round towers. They're not that big in diameter. Like you
That's
can just be
hilarious what
stacked.
they try to
So
convince
yeah,
us.
and I'm not even saying that I know for sure. I'm not gonna be pompous. I wasn't there, but
No, but
it
just
makes more.
funny though, just the funny
Yeah,
things that they say,
yeah,
like how
yeah,
much of a stretch. Like it reminds me of the horse and buggy people supposedly building all these crazy buildings across the
yeah,
world
yeah.
in
Of
less than a
course.
year. And
Yeah.
it's just wild.
And there can also be like small truths within greater
Oh
mistruths and
yeah, it's
vice
all mixed
versa.
up I think on purpose.
Yeah, on purpose.
Yeah.
Exactly. So utilizing absurdity and confusion is the biggest weapon. So
Yeah.
it's like yeah, maybe 10 Irishmen did hide in a round tower from some Vikings once, but that wasn't their inherent purpose.
Right, right. It's like if you're familiar with like the art of war, I see that in
Yeah,
a lot of
Sun Tzu.
things
Yeah.
happen with the world and stuff like the you know controllers, for lack of a better word, of the world, really are pretty damn good at that, and I'll give them that, but
Smart folks.
that
Yeah.
consciousness is rising, and the
Yes.
downfall is kind of inevitable, and already
Inevitable. Yeah.
has been. I
Smart
mean,
folks
since
though.
like
Yeah.
COVID, like the world has really changed, and like all sorts of like corporations have shut down, obviously,
Yeah.
or changed, like for like more higher quality products, or just and
Yeah.
just all of it. There's been a big divide, with the
For
vaccine.
sure. For sure. Yeah. I would say like right here, right now, we're using electroculture. I feel like I mean, I look like I soak. I want more people. I want bigger community of this. I'm
Oh
looking
yeah, me
for,
too. That's my bigger
so
intention, as big as
yeah, yeah.
possible.
So let's go. And like, but I honestly feel like just in general, like I'm trying to do what I feel like is the best job I can do. So like right here, right now, we're using electroculture. We're keeping it going. We're sharing like ways to use it
Pioneer.
for real. So yeah, so let's go. I mean, anybody that really wants to reach out, like I'll take time for you. It's just let's go.
It's exciting. Yeah, I'm sure some people will reach out.
Oh, for sure. No, I talk to people from all over the world. Australia is so enthusiastic. My biggest market. I send stuff there constantly. Such kind people. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I'm definitely sure people will be real interested who are, familiar with my stuff. To be very interested in yours too. And the last question, looks like we got like 2 minutes on here or three
yeah, yeah,
minutes.
let's go. Let's go.
Can you see the timer too?
Not till it gets. Oh yeah, I can. I
Okay,
can.
yeah, it's
Two
just
two
two.
37.
Okay,
Yep.
cool. But the
Let's try to finish.
last question just about you. So like where can anyone who's listening find you online on social media? You said you have your farm, White Squirrel Farm, if it was. Is that correct?
Yes, white squirrel farm. We had white squirrels on the property when we moved here, so it's kind of just an homage to them. But
Nice. That's great.
yeah, we don't sell squirrel meat or raise squirrels or anything because I have gotten weird calls. But no, white squirrel farm. We have on Instagram. That's where you can see pictures of vegetables and the farm and produce and all that. And then we have thefertilecurrent.com is all electroculture centric. You can buy all the antennas, all the accessories. I have several new exciting accessories and more are coming, modular stuff that you can add on, um, explanations on everything, information, pictures, diagrams, videos, graphics, drawings, artistic representations of electroculture, trying to provide it from all kind of angles to provide a really holistic view of what we're doing. And then I have a YouTube channel, The Fertile Current. So there's thefertilecurrent.com is the website, at the Fertile Current Instagram, the Fertile Current at you on YouTube. YouTube has all the longer format videos and long installation videos and that kind of stuff. It's really probably the best catalog of videos, but information wise and store wise, thefertilecurrent.com. Email is on there, my number. I mean, please reach out, anybody who wants help in actualizing these systems or needs some critical information. I'm here
Aw-
for you.
Awesome, brother. Well, thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom, man. I'm like super stoked. I'm actually going to spend the rest of the night building pyramids and just thinking about this. But
Awesome, dude.
thank you so much for being on, and we'll definitely have to have another podcast. And I really appreciate it, brother.
100%.
Thanks
Thank
again.
you so much, Sean. It's been a pleasure. Love you, bro.
You too, brother.